It can be hard to get along with family, and even harder if your twin wants to kill you.
To Gina, it was a diabolically perfect plan. She would kill her twin sister, assume her identity, and no one would ever know it happened.
On Killer Kin, a podcast from ID, you'll hear true stories about family members who turn against each other. Find out if evil is a family trait. Listen to Killer Kin on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Today's episode is brought to you by Achieve Unite, a global leader in leadership development, business acceleration, and trusted partnerships. Achieve Unite combines deep expertise, data analytics, and AI to help companies accelerate revenue, control costs, elevate talent, and build trust. They're more than advisors. They deliver results with their proven three-part approach: talent development, ecosystem strategy, and profitable growth programs. Whether you're strengthening alliances, enhancing internal systems, or optimizing your partner ecosystem, Achieve Unite is the partner you need for success. Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I am so glad you're here. We challenge conventional thinking about customer experience because I believe that improving experiences isn't just good for business. It's a powerful way to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. Each week, we feature thought-provoking conversations with industry thought leaders from a variety of backgrounds, offering unique perspectives and actionable insights. Get ready to sharpen your leadership and transform your approach to customer experience. Let's dive in. I am excited to welcome our new sponsor, JourneyTrack, to the Delighted Customers Podcast. A big thank you to Ania Rodriguez and the JourneyTrack team for supporting our mission to elevate customer experience. And it is just so cool to have someone in the same spirit trying to lift up CX. JourneyTrack is a leading enterprise journey management platform helping organizations create seamless, customer-centric experiences at scale. And their commitment to innovation and CX excellence makes them a perfect partner for this show. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest today, who is Ania Rodriguez. She is a self-made entrepreneur who has made a name for herself serving as a CX UX advisor to Fortune 500 companies around the world for 2 decades. Known for her focus on actionable results and quality, Ania's leadership has resulted in double-digit growth for her first company, Key Lime Interactive, over the past decade. The company has emerged to become one of the leading user experience research firms in the United States, and her work in CX UX as a strategist and researcher has demonstrated to her the need for a platform that could take journey mapping vision that she has to the next level. That long intro, Ania, so excited to have you on the show. Welcome aboard.
It's great to be here with you, Mark. Super excited as well.
And thank you for being a sponsor. Excellent. So today, we're going to be talking about this issue that's near and dear to so many industries, which is avoiding customer churn, right? Idea of retention. How do we do it? What's the role that journey mapping plays in it? And one of the reasons that I'm so excited to have you on the show talking about the solutions that you provide is I am a firm believer, someone who started out doing the old school version of journey mapping. And for those of you who are old timers, you can appreciate this. For those of you who are new to this world, be grateful that you don't have to go through this. But we would buy like a 100-pound roll of craft paper, bring it with us, schlep it with us into a conference room, sometimes across town, with a whole bunch of markers, Post-it notes, tape, all these supplies. It was like an arts and crafts expo. And we were the mules that were bringing all this stuff to this. Then we'd have to set it up, hang it up, and do it everything manually. And some of that still has a place, although now most of that's been replaced with whiteboards. And Ania's just put the whole thing on steroids with her tool that really takes it to the next level. And so, Ania, have I done a decent job of describing the evolution?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Mark. That's exactly right. We went from sticky notes and messy, boards that took weeks and weeks for people then to synthesize it and create these like pictures that would just sit in a wall to a very live and, constantly updated, tracking of actual actions against that journey map. And that's really the dream behind JourneyTrack, right? It's a way for companies, enterprise companies, to not just think about, the one-off processes, but to connect them to really understand where there's really opportunities and pain points that are really digging into their customer pain points and causing churn and causing major rifts in that, that experience with a brand.
So let's do some level setting for some people who may not be quite as familiar with the baseline, which is journey map. And one of the things that happened along the way for me was the importance of language and words is going from journey mapping to journey management and thinking about it differently. So if you could level set, I guess one way to do this would be to explain to the audience in your own words what the difference is between, say, a business process map and a journey map.
So I studied engineering, right? And when I went into the working world back 20-something years ago at this point, I was very familiar with process maps. We'd create process map, which was really just what was happening in the enterprise. What were the steps? What needed to happen? What if A happened, then B happened? If not, C happened. Really, journey mapping as a practice became popularized, if you will, even though it was around in the 70s and 80s. It really became popularized in the last 2 decades because as companies tried to move to a customer centricity, really thinking about that customer in the center, the art of like within design thinking, right? I was at IBM at that time, was really just to pull in and think about the customer, not just think about, so journey maps, what they do is not just map what's happening, but it also maps it from the customer experience. I always love to have my customers think about it this way. Imagine you're filming a film, right? And that film, you're taking the perspective of that actor. Like, what is that person seeing, thinking, feeling? What props are around? So when you create a journey map, you're thinking about everything that is in that scene, right? If you were designing the movie, that's what you would do, right? And so a journey map is not just what is happening, but what is it causing? What is that person feeling? Where's the things that are missing in scene? Did you forget to think about something in scene? What is an important thing that you should think about when you're in that specific moment, right? And so I think in doing that, it shifts the thinking from just like, quite frankly, what is happening to what is your customers really experiencing. And so that differential is really what accelerates things. And sort of parallel to this, some people will also do what's called a service blueprint, right? Which is an even more, sort of sophisticated look of not just what the customer is seeing, but what is happening with your processes in the back end. So like, if you back to my whole analogy with filming a movie, what's happening backstage? What is happening behind that front line, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I love the movie analogy. I never actually heard that, looking at it from the actor's lens, which is wonderful. And one of the things that you talked about, how they think, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, you're talking about kind of getting in the head and the heart of what someone going through the journey with you is like. And I think how does that inform the business? What is that understanding of their emotions and their thoughts? How does that inform what they should be doing differently?
Yeah. There's that famous saying, people don't remember what you did, but how you made them feel, right? And so those moments of like what they feel with your brand are those what they call moments of truth, right? The moment where they're going to either be so delighted or so enraged that they will either leave your brand or communicate to others what a great experience they have, right? And so in those little clips of time where if you can augment the good ones and really undo the bad ones is really where you can, now going back to the whole point of this session, churn, right? If you don't handle that mishap and that whatever moment of truth, then you're going to likely churn that customer because they're no longer going to be delighted and satisfied, and over time they're going to just say, you know what, this brand doesn't care about my needs, and so why should I keep giving them money, period.
So let's connect the dots for C-suite leaders about why this is such a big deal. And obviously, churn matters to anyone sitting in the C-suite. I think there are other implications as well. Do you want to shed some light on what you think they may be?
Yeah, why I really build JourneyTrack, and it's why, it's really about also building a company, right? There's where some people think of customer experience as maybe fluffy, nice to haves, and or like just something to say to delight, to say something out there. The reality is there is financial implications, right? And I know a lot of folks like to use some of the sort of typical customer experience metrics such as Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction. But the reality is at the C-suite, just like I'm managing two companies, you really care about the financial impact, right? So that everyone knows it, especially in this economy, that acquiring new customers is much more difficult than it is. And obviously losing one is going to cost you 5 to 7 times, depending on how you're doing it. There's also data to indicate companies that do care about their customers, their customer lifetime value is much higher. Forrester has some data around that, around 1.5 if I remember right. And so the amount there's real numbers that play into this, right? And so it's not just a soft science in that, oh great, people feel better. No. It's about are you going to keep your customers, and are they going to be able to amplify your brand and your reputation, right? Or diminish it. And so I always like to, and part of what we do at JourneyTrack was try to tie those two things together. And so there's always, show it vis-a-vis metrics. If you have that data, some customers may not, be a little bit more lower maturity and they're not there yet, but they get there because the reality is what keeps the C-suite up is, what is happening with revenue, what is happening with CAC, what is happening with lifetime value, customer lifetime value. Those are the things that are important. And so you should care. If you want to really ensure that you continue to be profitable and growing, you have to make sure your retention is there, right? And and that by in hand will increase your profitability. So these are basics to it, but it's sometimes the companies that are really customer focused, customer obsessed, whatever word you want to use, they get this, right? Really, really work out where those areas are, right? And in doing so, there's quick ROI to it. And that is much better than trying to, go out and try to, look at other business opportunities in certain ways. Or if you can fix what you have, obviously, and get, customers to stay, that's better than retain them. That's better than exploring other options. Because oftentimes I see a lot of companies, and I'm even talking the big, they don't do enough of the work up front to really do that right. And so they end up, it's a painful predicament when they need to correct it, but yet they need to correct it. Otherwise, there's brand impact to that.
So we're talking about, we just talked about churn and understanding these moments of truth, which there may be pain points, and then you also shared, kind of amplify those areas that are really important in a good way. So potentially building loyalty might be another benefit, right? And potentially an openness to more of your offerings.
Yeah. I mean, loyalty for me is not just discounts or rewards. Loyalty comes from real value, from them feeling they can trust you, from ease of use, not just the perks, right? And so, for sure.
Yeah. So the evolution from roll paper, craft paper, schlepping that around and Post-it notes and so forth. Tell us about how your organization, your tool, your solution can help companies do this in an efficient way and a way that isn't just an event but ongoing. Mm-hmm. How it can provide actionable data, even real-time data, that shifts very far away from the soft, fluffy feel of a arts and craft project to this is really concrete stuff. How does that happen?
Yeah. I think I like the way you started this with the whole thinking around business process management. For those that went through that era and did that was really key to sort of leveling the business, right? Well, I feel like this journey management as a practice, and it is, to your point, a newer practice, if you will, even though customer journey mapping has been around, that idea of management is sort of newer, right? And so manage it by, and I think we were going to define it, is really not just saying, here's the map of what's happening and what the customer, all the sort of core journeys. It's really understanding where those breaks forwards are, what actions and how you as a business are going to prioritize that to help you understand like how important this is for the customer, how important it is for the business. So both looking at both those two different ways to look at it, vis-a-vis. And in doing so, you basically have, you're able to really prioritize what's important, right? And very much you can decide, I'm going to put the lens of the customer, I'm going to put the lens of the business, and in some intersection there, also based on effort and a couple other factors, you're going to make decisions on what you think are predictive that's going to move especially if you have goals to continue increasing revenue and reduce losses and things like that. What it helps you do is really create a strategy that you can track and trace it from any data that's coming in from your business, whether it's qualitative in nature, quantitative nature, and really sort of pipe that into the actions that your teams are doing to fix some of these, if you will, opportunities within the business. It'll give you a real measurable view of what that impact is over time, right? And I think that's the difference, right? So in the old days, people just a map, and then everybody was just a piece of paper, and some of the things got done, other things didn't happen. Well, now there's a way to really see if it's happening or not, and that's the first check mark. Next thing, is it really moving the needle in any of our measures, whatever measures are important for you as a business? So that's the next check mark, right? And then the third the check mark here is how can we look at all signals and triangulate that to see if we're missing other areas? Because what I commonly see is the friction points is when there's two different departments, because they're so siloed, especially in the enterprise, when they have to come together and they didn't realize that one was doing this and the other one was doing that. And those conversations are fun to watch because it's some basic things that no one expects.
So I love that story and that illustration of silos bumping into each other. And my own experience with Journey Maps is I remember I worked in a bank for a long time, and I remember someone in the deposit operations side was in the same journey mapping session as the head of the contact center. And they were constantly finger pointing at one another. And the journey map took it all from the customer's vantage point, and their eyes were open and got to see it for the first time and realized there was a whole bunch of assumptions that were happening about the other side. It's sort of the typical writing stories about other people. But the journey map took it out of your fault, my fault, and brought it and took a look at it from the customer's lens. And the silos broke down. I remember that gentleman, his name was Pat, and he said, "This was the most productive day I've had here in 12 years." So does that story resonate? CX professionals know that every touch point matters, but managing the entire customer journey can be challenging, especially for enterprises due to disjointed data, difficulty aligning stakeholders, and struggling to secure executive support. That's where JourneyTrack comes in. JourneyTrack integrates journey mapping, management, and measurement, allowing you to pinpoint friction, optimize experiences, and demonstrate the ROI of CX initiatives. So you can align teams, break down silos, and then you can track improvements in real time. With JourneyTrack, you get visibility across every channel and touchpoint. No more guesswork, just clear insights and measurable results. Join the CX leaders who transform journeys into improved experiences with impactful business outcomes like reduced churn and increased customer lifetime value. Visit JourneyTrack.io today and see how better journeys lead to better business.
That's exactly what happens day to day. That's why we built in the whole workshop feature as an important. We're the only one that has that differentiator. Because we know those conversations, when what people think is happening and what's really happening, are just they're eye-opening. And it's always, I mean, I kind of smiled when you said this, because this conversation happened with a bank not like 2 weeks ago. They literally they thought in general, they had their cards. They thought it was a different phone number on it, and they realized that one other group was getting those calls. And they were like, "No, that's not the number on it." And someone said, "Let's go get the onboarding, card, and let's look at what it looks like." And yeah, those are big. Like you have a moment where the president says, "What just happened? How did we do this? How did we drop this so badly? No wonder people are having a hard time onboarding." And that's new. Onboarding is one of the biggest friction points in financial services, as you probably know. And so that's where you need to make sure you don't mess it up.
As simple as a number. This is the funny thing. This is the irony of it. And going through a process like this, I want to hear, as soon as I'm done talking, I want to hear more about that feature that you said nobody else has and how it works. But, this kind of, it's a number. I mean, we had the change of address process. When a customer wants to change their address, they wanted to do a journey map just for that process. And I'm like, you sure that's going to be enough content for a journey mapping workshop? And they said, oh, yeah, because when a customer wants to change their address, there's at least 5 different channels they can go through to do that. And then there's a whole bunch of regulations around, like if it's a spouse, if it's a joint account, it could be a soon-to-be ex-spouse, and they don't want the address change where the bank statements go, right? And so there's all sorts of regulations around that. And it became a whole journey mapping session, part of the journey mapping management strategy, but a session. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I think I heard you mention this at the beginning of the show, or early on in the show, was when you go through this process, while it sounds soft, touchy-feely, there's really concrete results, and we can reduce churn. But if you are a leader, you're in the C-suite listening to this, you need to know that when you go through this, I can promise you, and you can verify this and validate me on this if it's true, Ania, but I can promise you that there will be low-hanging fruit. There will be quick wins that do not cost the organization a lot of money to fix and will build momentum. What's been your experience?
For sure, 100%. There's some simple things that happen in these conversations that moves the needle like by so much, sometimes surprisingly so. If you end up looking this sort of just the whole sort of birth of it, you'll probably see an example that was done with GE Healthcare and Stanford School. They were a customer of us in those years, right? And the whole everyone's scared of going into an MRI machine. It's scary. The whole journey that's used in that experience, that example, was around a little kid going into the MRI machine and sort of all that anxiety that happens, right? And quite frankly, the solution was just stickers, making it look like it's like, Winnie the Pooh land or cars or whatever.
Campfire, campgrounds.
Campfire, and they give them a little backpack and do stuff to like really alleviate, which quite frankly has some real, high impact. The kids, the likely them to be, having to take drugs will sort of minimize. The ability for them to stay engaged will be in there. It makes it fun. I mean, simple, tiny things. And this is a well-known example, but I'm just using this to kind of showcase how simple stickers can change a whole process, right? And that to me is sort of the epitome of how simple some of these solutions are. But at the end of the story, it's those tiny things, just like everything in life. There's those tiny things that just do sometimes miracles. And it's when you pull together and you really just start, thinking about what is potential simple solutions to this, you'd be surprised how much teams can come up with like low risk, low cost fixes that really just make, huge differences.
Let me double click on what you said earlier about the unique tool feature that your program or your tool offers.
Yeah. So we traditionally this work, to your point, is done with a bunch of sticky notes, and everybody in this call has probably at one point been in some workshop of sorts. When we were doing that work with my first company, that's a huge engagement. It's a lot of time and money, and strategic money. That this is huge to get all these executives, 60 executives in the room to run these workshops over X number of days. And at the end of the story, they need a way to synthesize that, right? So as we built this, we're like, listen, there's different ways that you can bring in what's happening today. You can bring in, all the data you have, qualitative, quantitative, and use what's called Journey AI. That's one way. But the way that customers typically do this is because there's data everywhere and data nowhere at the same time, they run workshops. And during COVID, many companies then had to move to like the digital whiteboard kind of solutions because there was no way to do that. The challenge you have with that is it's still the same problem. You get done with that workshop and what do you have to show for it? Now somebody has to translate everything that happened to go to the next step, right? So having experienced and lived that and really just wanted to capture was really happening and not, we created a feature right at the beginning, which was like run your workshop just like you would, right, within the tool, and literally at the click of the button, it creates that baseline journey, which is based on what everyone talked about it. And what's neat about it is there's voting capability. So you can, as a team, you can do the typical, like, in the past, you used to put like, similar themed notes on one side and the other, and then you create what the topic theme was at. That's called affinity mapping if you want to dork out a little bit, but that is what a lot of the consultants do, right, to basically get that baseline journey. Because the reality is even in the largest companies that you think that they really get data, there's so many different interpretations of what's happening, right? So that baseline journey or what everybody think is happening is so important to capture it, because then you can validate it. Is this really what's happening? And we have this feature. We built the whole jobs to be done framework, which for those that don't know what that is like how important is this whatever point of the experience to your customer, and how satisfied they are. And so what we did during the workshop part of it, we have like what we call a presumptive, like what we think the team thinks. How important do they think it's to their customers, and how satisfied do they think, right? And it's always interesting to see that, vis-a-vis when we track it, because we give them both as time passes, what the team thought versus what is really happening. Because when you do this work, you really want to focus on things that have high dissatisfaction, like people are not satisfied but are super important, right? So there's a little bit of a triangle. They call this an opportunity triangle. Oftentimes we'll see that, and it works. This is to your point of where things are, people get really off. People think this is not important, and for customers it's something very important. And the things that they feel that the customers feel like it's that not important, someone internally thinks is super important. And granted, there's going to be times you're going to have to make a decision for a business, because maybe there's something that you are seeing. Obviously, your customers are only seeing sort of the reacting to whatever you're building. So we find that sometimes you're going to have to say, well, this is important for the business because this is a strategic, sort of step into this direction we're going to go, and that's okay. But where it gets interesting is where they totally miss it because they just thought it wasn't important, or they thought it was super important and it's not important at all to their customers. And those are fun points of those conversations. Those productive days where you're like, wow, this is so interesting days. So,
yeah, I mean, what you're describing reminds me of like the analogy of me out in my front yard trying to plant a tree and using a spade shovel and a traditional shovel and digging away. And if you haven't dug in a while, the older you get, the harder it is. But then someone comes along with one of these bobcats with the front loader, on it, and can literally dig the hole in a matter of seconds. And so planting the tree becomes a fun event when you've got that looking in front of you. And I think that's a difference between the way we used to do it and now what you've got with your tool, being able to not have to recreate the whole baseline of the journey map, but you can do it with a click, as an example. And the other thing, for those listening now back to the strategic side of it, is I remember having Jason Barrow from NPS Prism from Bain on the show early on, and he talked about the ability to know which levers to pull, know which levers to push, and how far to pull or push them. And this is what your tool can help really in many ways automate, right?
Yeah, it does. It's exactly right. And just understanding, what if I pull this one, what historically has happened? And what do we do in this case? Like, what should we think about when we're doing these changes? Is that proactive sort of using data to basically, help you decide and really pull it? It was very different in the days that, when we were just doing, even for those companies are still using whiteboards, you really can't action on that. You can't do anything. That's the difference between just doing a simple journey map. And I find it interesting because I find one of the things that I think that I've seen more as I've been working with a lot more of just both U.S. based and internationally based companies, right? It's really like how important is really identifying where those areas are for a customer to really pull in. And honestly, what I've noticed is there's what I've seen anyways in the U.S. from a maturity perspective in this practice, there's still a thinking at some levels that this is a one kind of year kind of thing, right? And it's that the practice of continuously doing this work and really having a tool that lets you continuously look at this. Okay, we're making these strategic changes. It's not this one and done kind of annual event that we do. And then just kind of set it and forget it. It's really that proactive, like, let's see what happens. If we do these shifts, now we've seen these outcomes based on these actions we took. What is that going to take us to the next level?
I mean, a lot of part of getting decisions made, which is a big part of what I try to help CX professionals with, is getting executive buy-in, is making it simple and easy for them to understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve. And what you're describing there really does, and not just for the C-suite, but for other levels as well, provide those sort of insights that then you can take action on. And it's not just a gut feel or putting your finger in the air, but you've got some solid data that's triangulated as you said, that you can then act on with a certain level of confidence.
For sure.
We talked about several different strategies. There's one more that I'd like to kind of end on, and that is, if you don't have a journey mapping strategy, if you're listening to this and you haven't in your organization but haven't done it, but you'd really like to bring it in, what's the steps that they should be thinking about going through to fully integrate journey mapping, journey management into their organization?
Yeah. I like to, I guess the first point of is understanding, what I've seen most successfully work is that, there's small groups, just almost like a small, and I've seen it happen where there's like 15 people around the globe if it's a huge Fortune 500. And that's big because it's different brands maybe playing into this, but really sort of pull together almost a small team, depending on the size of the company. What is that, that turns into that for you? But it's really it starts with just dipping your foot and just even doing the basic. To me, that's workshopping has become sort of super important because some of this early customers, they'll do is run a lot of workshops because they want to at least get a baseline of what is happening, what they think is happening, right? And so that is a simple way, and we've made it so simple for anyone to do that. I think that's why we have customers, all they do is run workshops. That's all they do. They don't even they run baselines, and because quite frankly, depending on your size of your business, but we see that customers in the year one, especially at an enterprise, which is our typical customer, they're going to create anywhere from 60 to 90 journeys in their first year. And so sometimes they want to go, sort of breadth. I tend to want them to go narrow and just really get an ROI case going for their business. Mm-hmm. But sometimes there's so much excitement that happens. I'm like, wow, we can at least, create a baseline, and at least then we can connect data to it and see what's happening. There's different ways to do this, but I'm of the school of thought that you start small and then you build from it, right? And so if I was just starting, I would create a small, working group that's going to do this, and then really just identify, sort of the top. In our tool, we have templates for you to start, right? So that's another way to get going, right? Or quite frankly, it's bringing in data, right? So pull in a couple of customer interviews that's been done through your teams, through your sales, through research, whatever you want, and then create that baseline and start validating that and understanding, is this really what's happening? What's not happening, right? And so there's those three ways. You either start from a template, you start from a workshop, or you start from your data, and then you continue to build on that.
Yeah, great first steps, great way to get started. It's been a fascinating conversation. I know we're going to have more of them this year with you. So grateful for that. But before we sign off, one final question, which I ask all my guests now, which is, what delights you as a customer?
I just said I like to start small. I like little things. So to me, those little personal touches, those little, you don't have to do a lot. For me, you just give me the smallest things and I'm happy, right? For me, I don't need a lot. I'm not one of those people that feels like they need to be showy. So it's those little personal touches. You call me to, my birthday. It's silly, right? You call me on my birthday, or if I get there, the other days it was my birthday here in February, so that's why it's sort of really top of mind, right? Yeah, and we went to dinner and it had my name printed on the menu. I'm like, I know that a lot of people do that, but I always find it so such a endearing kind of thing. It's they printed something for me. It's silly. It's those personal touches, and I really pull to those kinds of differentiation experiences.
Well, and I don't think it's a little thing. I think it's a really important thing to make it personal, and I'm sure that is a solution that would come out a lot of journey mapping sessions, is to amplify this particular point. It could be on the plus side where it's something they love and they want more of, or it could be on the negative side where they feel like a number, they feel like they're being ignored, and you could do something to make that special. So what a great tip. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for being on the show and for being a new sponsor of our show. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, will be the best way. And then do you offer either a demo or a consult that they could have to get more information?
Yeah, for sure. I can be reached either via LinkedIn or even just writing to sales@JourneyTrack.io. Even though I don't do day-to-day sales, I get those emails so we know who's in. But if you, for sure, on the website on JourneyTrack.io, you can sign up for a demo. I'm happy to show you for customers that need to kind of play with it. There's a 30-day free version that you can get on, which is really great if you're just trying to dip your toes and understand what this is for. And then I'm happy to have someone on my team walk you through a more extensive demo. And we also have a couple of partnerships with a couple of folks who do different trainings. And so if you're just new and trying to get in, happy to help you and get that going.
Excellent. Ania, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It's always fun talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Delighted Customers podcast. It would mean so much if you would take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts, click on the plus sign or follow button, and that will ensure that you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.